Okay, welcome to what probably will not be a very quick video about Captura. I've been asked many times to sort of go through Captura, try to give everybody an idea of how to use it, how to try to get the most out of it. It does take a little bit of work. It takes a lot of playing around and a little bit of time to get photos that you want. We will not be going into the video aspect of Captura today because that video will just be way too long. So we will see how this goes, run through a whole bunch of different things, hopefully get some tips and tricks, and be able to get some cool screenshots for your Warframes. So first is you got to be able to actually get into Captura. So Captura has got through the arsenal, so we can just run down on the arsenal. You just jump in, pick the frame you want. I think we will take Nova today. Pick some cool weapons. Remember, it doesn't matter what you bring as long as it looks cool. So it doesn't need to worry about rank, doesn't need to worry about anything. Just bring it because it looks pretty and because you want to, try to showcase something about the weapon or about the Warframe in Captura. So to get in here, you go up to your Warframe, you go into Appearance with X, and then you'll see down in the lower corner here where it says Captura, you just hit X again, and it'll take you to the Captura screen. Then you can pick which scene you want to use. The scenes are many. By default, early on, you only have so many. As you move through the game, you can pick these up in different ways. Through syndicates, I have almost all of them, but I do not have all of them yet. There's some cool ones, there's some that aren't so great, and the strangest part about this is that there's some that work well, and there's some that don't work so well. The don't work so wells are ones where the lighting in the scene is not very controllable. Whereas if you go to this like green screen, color screen, some of these first ones up here that came out initially, they're pretty full featured as far as scene lighting, the ability to adjust different levels, and some of these other ones are very strange. Like this War Within one, that scene, there is really not a lot of lighting choice in that, so you have to really watch for those and sort of experiment with them to see what works well for each Warframe. It can take, quite a bit of time to figure out how these different scenes work and trying to get what you want out of this. So let's just, let's find a decent one here. So, forest scene's kind of boring. The nursery's kind of cool. Let's see here. Let's see if we can find something. There's the exit. We want to do something that's interesting, but something that also works pretty good. And hopefully isn't a giant spoiler for most people. Let's see. How about we could do this reactor, or we'll just do this nursery scene. We'll see how the lighting works in this. So you just pick it, and then you load into it. There's a bunch of tips and tricks as far as the controls, how to get to the controls, how to take the photos, and actually do the snapshots themselves. Positioning, lighting, all of those things. But the easiest way to figure out any of this stuff is just to play with it. This is pretty much how people in photography do it. It's how probably the scene lighting people that do this at DE do it. They mess around with it. They try to get different things that look good using some basic rules. So if you look at this scene, it's kind of complicated. It has a bunch of stuff. Oh look, my dog's with me. Cool. One other little tip, real quick, is sentinels. Sentinels in Captura can be kind of annoying because they tend to get in the way of everything right when you think you have your perfect shot. So I usually don't equip them unless I'm trying to get something where the sentinel's doing something cool, like with maybe Taxon that can actually be shooting a beam at an enemy so that it will, just bring some more interest to the photo. But for today, no sentinel, but brought my puppy so he can go eat things. So First thing is let's find a cool place to sort of call home here for a minute. Sort of check this scene out and see what else is around here. You have to sort of dig into these scenes a little because some of them, you know, go a bunch of different doors. You can go to a bunch of different places, and you can pick all these backdrops and do different things. So let's just who's over here. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to figure out kind of what all the settings are and what you can do. So to do that, you're going to see there's a little toggle free camera down in the right hand corner there, and it says push up. So what this does is it freezes your screen. So as you can see, if I was posed or shooting, let's say I was shooting, I can pose and then I can move around and get to different angles. So this can become tricky because if you hit the wrong button after you think you have the perfect shot, you will lose the shot. So what you want to do here is just start to get used to these controls. So push up blocks it, push up blocks it, right? So then you want to look at your screen over here and you have this X does this, A does this, all these different things. Most of the time free motion is the way that I would do this. So you can, you know, zoom in, you can zoom right up to the gun, you can do whatever you want here, just using left and right stick. So there's a few things going on here. So the first thing is that with all of these options on the right, the most important thing in here is probably Y, because Y gets rid of that screen. So if you want to toggle this on and off, I see so many Captura pictures that are really cool, and this screen is in the shot. So the first thing that you want to do is know that you can get rid of this just by hitting Y. The other one that's important on here is where it's to get deeper into the settings is right stick press. So you can just press in on that and get that. And then you have a ton more stuff going on in here. So like I said earlier, we are not going to get into the video aspect of all of this, but we are going to get into some of these other settings. The first one's up here, depth of field. That's how deep or how far you can see into the scene. And the easiest way to deal with this is you can just turn these on and off. So if you turn this off, your depth of field is technically 0. So you can see everything in the scene. There is no cool defocused blurring. That type of blurring is what most photographers really go for to bring out a subject in a photo. So if I want to just see one thing and not see a lot of background, I can turn this on and then I can ramp these up by just grabbing these sliders and moving them back and forth. So as you can see, as you move it one direction, it can get blurrier, and you can see how the subject in the foreground here, which is Nova, is, you know, as you move it up, she gets more blurry. So that loses stuff. So these two sliders, this first distance and the second depth, you balance these by moving these in different directions, and you can see how if I push one up, push one back, the scene's going to change, and you really have to sort of look at this. The other thing that D does a lot of is they put a lot of grain into these photos, into these scenes, which makes them, in my opinion, harder to understand what's truly going on. I'll usually come down here and turn the grain off and then bring grain back into it to make it kind of cool, sort of literally grainy looking, to give it a little bit of more texture later on. A couple other things in here. So depth of field, we'll play with that in a minute. Usually this, I'm just going to turn these all the way down for now, or up and down, so that the screen looks pretty clear. So then you've got exposure, which is clearly how much brightness is in the scene. So you can just mess with these. These are the easiest ways to figure these out. Ramp them all the way up, take them all the way down, give them an idea of where you want to be. Then that's the easiest way to check any of these. Just mess around with them. So field of view brings it in closer, brings it in farther away. What you're going to want to use this for is, it starts out, let's say the default is sort of here. And if you wanted to move around and get in closer, but you can't get in close enough because the camera seems to be stuck, you can use field of view to get in even closer. We'll mess with that too. This right here is some built-in filters. We'll come back to that. Grain is something that we talked about. You can see how grainy it is all the way at the top. When you pull all that grain out, that grain goes away. You might not be able to see this on YouTube because the video compression is so terrible, but you'll definitely see it if you're playing with it on the game. Saturation is how much color is in the scene, so you can pull it all the way down. It goes to black and white. Push it all the way back up, it goes to color. You're going to notice that some of these take a while to catch up, so you're just going to want to watch those as you're doing it. Usually these things pretty saturated, looks pretty good. Don't worry about these are for video. You can add text to the screen. We're not going to do that in today's thing, but this light right, this option right here under lights is really interesting. So this actually makes this so it's like a photo studio. You turn this on and it gives you individual control of different lights. So the main light is the light that's main on the subject. And you can actually ramp these up and down to see where these main lights are. So there's the main light. You can see how that illuminates Nova from basically for the majority of her body. Ramp this down a little, or actually turn it off so you can see these other ones. Brightness for the fill is fill on her like edges. You can see it going up and down. These are pretty good where they're at usually, but definitely worth messing around with. And actually, we will turn this one all the way down, and then we will turn this one all the way up, and you can see how rim lighting basically lights the outside of the subject. So outside edges of Nova are illuminated by this. This can really bring out a lot of cool details, so you definitely want to mess with these and use 3-light setup, and it sort of makes your capture that much better. Gives you a lot more control. Knowing that if you just want to screenshot and you're not looking for anything cool, you could just go in here, screenshot something, and you're done. You don't need to spend all day in here, but for those of us that enjoy doing this, we could probably spend all day in here. Rotation is the ability for the light to move around the subject. So if you can see, you just roll these back and forth and you can see how those lights illuminate different parts. So if you go, I usually go pretty slow through these to sort of see how and what edges are lit up, and it can really make the photo, the Captura piece really pop out, which is a lot of fun. So then, scene lighting. So scene lighting controls scene lighting for the entire scene. This is usually the feature that either works really well in a scene or works really badly in one of the scenes. So as an example here, if you ramp this all the way up, you can see how the entire scene blows out, becomes really white, because this is already a pretty bright scene. And if you go all the way down, you can see how most of the scene drops completely out. And you can see how slow that drops out. So this is if you want to make your Warframe the center of attention, drop the scene light down. It doesn't need to be all the way down, but I can tell you that this is a pretty touchy deal. So if you look, it's just one little bump and it goes to black. And you bump it up just a little and it really brings a lot of that scene back. So I tend to, if I'm doing a scene where I just want something really focused on the Warframe, I will go all the way down and not care. But having a little interest in the background, like you see over in the left corner, makes things a little bit more interesting for the person that's looking at the actual image. So we'll mess with that also. As you go down farther here, you can set slow motion. Slow motion allows you to, let's say you're firing off an ability or you want to do something like that. We will use this today. You can actually slow it down so you can get to different little pieces of that ability. Or that, basically it will slow the frame rate down so much that you'll be able to see every little piece of each thing that you are doing, so that you can get your Warframe, the weapons, and the abilities into the perfect sync / setup / position that you could possibly want. I can tell you that this is great until the day that you hit the wrong button and then you drop out of it, which I'm sure will happen today to me, and then all of a sudden you've lost your entire shot that you were trying to get and you have to start all over. So just be careful with it. Just know that you sort of have to get used to these controls or you will lose what you're trying to do. You can actually manually advance time right here using this, which actually you can just see if you just click on it. It will just slowly scroll forward in whatever you're doing. You can toggle the time. You can then also, if you have enemies that you've spawned, you can kill them. You can enable friendly fire, so you can bring your friends into Captura and kill them, and then take pictures of it. And then you can also select a different Captura scene, but we won't be doing that for this. So let's go out and try to do something that's cool. So you can just back out of it using B, and B again, and that brings you back out so that you have the ability to run around. And then let's figure out something that we want to do here. So I guess the question is what do we want to do? I like to try to showcase some kind of ability that the Warframe has in some way with the scene that makes it look cool, gives it some interest, and makes people want to look at and hopefully like the photo. So, I mean, obviously there's a few things that we can do with the weapons that we have here. I don't even know. So let's see, we got an Orthos, we got a shotgun that will just spend its life reloading. And then let's see what else we got the Piranha, so that's so you can just move around, figure out what you want to do. So that's nice. A dog's butt right there. This is the hard part about Captura, because you can actually move through these. I wish you would turn around. This shot would actually be really cool. So let's back out. Oh, and this does happen. So if you're shooting and you lock it out using the toggle, it will actually keep shooting until you pull the trigger again. So let's see if we can do this. Move dog. Just to run through a couple of these different things, you can actually make the screen go back and forth. That's using right button and left button, so you can, I think it will do 360, so it'll go all the way around if you hold it long enough. This is good for balancing out shots. Let's see if this doesn't look terrible down here. Yeah, see, so all this he's too close. I tell you, this is the hardest part of Captura, is figuring out what scene. Let's just lock this in right here, and then you can actually start firing, block it out by pressing up. And we just want to figure out if there's, like, you don't want to block your face, but you want to make these big enough that they fill the screen. And that is kind of a photography rule also, is if you get in here, fill up the screen, it's always more interesting. Sadly, a dog is never in the right spot. So let's see, so you can get in pretty close. Let's see if we can do this. I like it. Find a different spot. Never in the right spot. Let's try some abilities. So let's see. So our first and second. So let's see. Third, which is Nova. So you can stop these in the middle of anything that you're trying to do. And then if we go into this screen, we can actually go down to slow motion, enable it. You can then set how slow you want. 1 is pretty slow. Usually you can do 2. And then you have to back out 1 so that you can then use right trigger to sort of just slowly advance how you want it. Ugh, this is where things can get ugly. Just have to keep playing with the shot. Zip around this, try to figure out if there's anything that looks like you want to actually use it. And there's not. So some of this looks pretty cool. So I have to sort of pick it. This is why Captura takes hours. Let's see here. So let's say, I don't really like any of this. This is pretty good. So let's take this. So there's some interest in the background. Obviously there's the weapon in the foreground. Nova's looking pretty cool. Lighting's pretty decent. And then what we want to do is just get this, fill the screen in some way or another. So this is usually where I screw this up and lose everything. This is where you want to think about your buttons. So you want to toggle the panel, which is why you want to go into settings, which is right stick, click. And then you want to start looking at all of your different settings in here. So the first one I'm going to look at here is scene lighting. So if I want to, the only problem with this is that this panel is sort of in the way of everything. So you sort of might need to back out and go back in to look at these. I advise being careful because you'll get it really close and then you'll lose it all because you'll hit the wrong button. So let's bring down the scene light a little. Don't really care if my dog goes away. Obviously, I think we're going to go with no rear scene. So all you really see is a little bit off to the left there. This is a bummer because you can't really see Nova very well with this panel in the way. But let's take a look here. So let's take rotation. Sort of push rotation around a little here. Sort of like it when there's light on her face. Oh, that's kind of cool. Has two eyes now. So we can sort of just keep fiddling around with this until we find something we like. This is all personal preference. There is no right way to do Captura. So let's see if we can get this to place. This is pretty difficult sometimes with controller because it's just not very precise. I think I'm going to go with somewhere so you can actually see how the dog in the background is lit up right now. But if you just go a little bit to the next side, you can get rid of them. So you always got to be looking in the foreground and the background. I think I'm actually going to use that right there. Then we can start looking at some of these others. So ramp up this all the way to the top for main light. Bring the main light down. Ooh, I like that. So you can see how this gun sort of disappears a little at the end. But Nova's really sort of the one on display, but the gun is still interesting. But it really goes too black. So maybe just somewhere in there. And brightness here is rim light on her. So you can see that it sort of brings out the edge. So I'll probably ramp this all the way up. You can change these colors. I'm not going to go through doing that today, but it will definitely bring out different details in each aspect of those lights. It's very subtle though, in most cases. Main light could be pretty not subtle at times. So those right there, let's see what this one does. This really makes her dark, bright. Just a little. Rotation still looks pretty good. What I said, this can take hours. It's so funny. It looks like eyes. we'll leave it about there. So that handles those right there. Then we can start looking at field of view and exposure up here. So your exposure up here, ramp it all the way up or ramp it all the way down. That wouldn't make a very interesting photo. So let's bring this back up. And then you've got your depth of field settings. So this will actually blur different pieces of everything. So if I just bring this up a little, you can see how the gun goes out of focus. So let's bring this up just a little, and then let's play with depth on the next gauge here. Let's see how, if I bring this up, I can't get that gun back into focus. So I'm going to go back up, fiddle with this a little by bringing it down more. Bring this up, and now the gun. So you can actually see the lines in the background get defocused and then get sharp again. So what you're trying to do is set depth and make it look like it's farther away, which means it wouldn't be as much in focus. Versus if I just went up here and just turned off depth of field, everything sharpens up on the entire screen. So it's just not as interesting looking, it's not as realistic, because in many cases the world doesn't look like that. So just mess around with this a little. It's too, I don't like it like that, so we'll leave it like that for the minute. So right now you have a pretty decent shot. So what I usually recommend is backing out of this and taking at least one screenshot. That way, at least you got something. If you screw it up from there, it's not that big of a deal. So we would want to back it out to here, hit Y, and then if you have, so if you go back into Y, you can see that it says hit the Xbox button to take the screenshot. That is one thing you can do. If you have a chat pad, you can also, that by default, the number 1, the X1 or number 1 times 1 button right next to the spacebar will also take it. So if you just press that, you're going to see that it will then take the screenshot, which you won't, well, you'll probably see that in the video. So if that didn't pop up, it just took the screenshot. So now we're one screenshot down, so that's not too bad. I'm going to go back in here, I'm going to hit my right stick for my settings, and then I'm going to mess with filters, because this can really bring out some cool details in these. So you got a bunch of them in here. You got neutral, which is where you start. You got contrast, which changes a lot of the different colors. You got blood, which turns everything blood red. We have bleach, which bleaches a lot of the colors but brings out a lot of detail. We have burn, which usually turns it into something that looks pretty cool, like it does right there. Black and white, which changes things to black and white, obviously. These can be pretty cool, especially if you mess around with some of the colors and some of the intensities, and then you can actually do some interesting things with filters right here, with filter depth and reverse filter depth. We'll come back to that in a minute, though. We'll just keep going through these. So then we've got cross process, which makes some pretty interesting colors. You've got negative, which I have never ever used because I think it usually looks awful. That one doesn't look that bad, but usually it's just awful. Two new ones that were just added to the game is Lotus Glow, which that actually ends up looking pretty good. And then you've got Edge of Shadows, which can look pretty artsy black and white, which looks pretty cool for most of the things you want to impress, like Steve at DE. Use a lot of grain and black and white photos. He seems to love those. So let's go back to something like cross process or burn. Let's go to burn. So this is pretty cool. So if I back one out, you can, and you see, that's how you screw up your Captura. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to get back to where I was without getting too far off. So this is why you got to be really careful when you're doing this, or else you will end up like me, recording a video and screwing up your Captura. So as you can see, I'm pretty close to back where I was. And very careful with these controls. You can sort of get back to where you were. These are so hard with a controller. So that's pretty close. Disappointing. But maybe sometimes it's like a happy accident. So we're there. Now what I can do is hit Y, and we can look at the other shots later, but honestly that's going to be fine for me for today. I'm going to hit Y. I'm then going to take another screenshot using either 1 or the Xbox key to actually take the screenshot itself. And then I can just go back in with Y with right stick if I wanted to try one of these other ones. Let's say cross-process, Lotus, or Edge of Shadows. Let's do Edge of Shadows so then I can actually back out again. I can hit Y. I can make sure I don't move anything and take another screenshot. So, to start to quickly wrap this up, the one thing that I didn't show you guys is the fact that there is that filter depth and these two right here. So, reverse filter depth and filter depth. So, reverse filter depth, actually I think I'm going to show this in something that is not black and white because it's just easier. So, let's go back to burn. You can, remember, don't forget your grain. So you can always bring grain back into it. It sort of makes it a little bit more intriguing as far as the way the colors blend and that type of thing. I'm usually like a pretty low grain person, but just don't tell anybody that. So you can actually go in here and look at filter depth. And filter depth will actually, it's how deep the filter goes in here. And these things are very touchy. So as you can see, it is right at the end there, and the only way you're going to know how these affect what is to move the sliders around. The other one is you can actually reverse this filter, where it will work exactly the opposite way, which in this case, this filter hates me. So I think we're just going to leave it the way it was. So other than that, filter opacity allows you just to make the filter brighter or less filter being applied to that actual image. So these are pretty nice because you can, some of these are just out of control and you can actually back them way down. So let's see how this works with some obscene one like Lotus, and then I go to filter opacity and I can actually drop it down so that I still get a little bit of that effect, but it's nowhere near the max effect. Don't know how this works with negative. Let's try it. This negative is fully negative, or you can, as you see, as you push this up, it gets very strange through the middle. So, actually this full brightness looks kind of cool, but you can see how these are not perfect. So, I mean, this is not Photoshop, so I don't expect perfection, but some of these are a little quirky, and you just sort of have to work with them as you go. Let's go back to burn. You can see that there's actually no filter. You can burn it in, depending on how much opacity you want. So, in a nutshell, that is Captura tools. If you back out of this, back out again, you can see that she then rotates back to the home position, so to speak. The weird part about this is I still have slow motion on, so if I run, it's pretty slow. So you can actually go back in here and turn this back off, or else it'll take you 2.5 hours to leave Captura. So now you can see that this lighting craziness that I designed is now affecting this entire scene in this Captura very strangely. The way that you would reset this is you can go back in, you can go back into your settings, and then you can hit X, and it defaults back out to the main screen. and then you can run around and you can shoot stuff and you can run through things. So that is really where this is all at. Hopefully this is helpful to a lot of people. This video is obviously pretty long. There's a lot of settings in here, and if we went into the video aspects of it, which I really have not played a lot with yet, moving cameras, doing all the different parts of that, adding text, those are all things that you can do, but you got to master all these controls and understand what's going on. The best way to do that is just to play with it and to ask questions. I'm happy to take questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Hit like if you like the video. Heck, join our clan. Jump into Captura with 5 other people, and be able to run around and shoot each other with friendly fire, and then be able to take pictures of the gore afterwards. It's up to you. I'll leave it off here. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, hopefully you'll be able to post some Captura, or feel free to tag me and send it to me. I'd love to see some stuff from either clanmates or anybody playing Warframe. Thanks again. Hopefully this helped. Have a good one.